Well, here's a tricky position that came up in our chouette in Chicago the other day. Um, Blue uh, just left two blots in his inner board, made actually a very, very fine play to hit loose and maintain his prime. And red is on roll. What's the proper cube action? Would you double this if you're red? And if you're blue, would you take or pass? These positions are scary. This is a prime versus prime position. It's not a classic 6 prime versus 6 prime or 5 prime versus 5 prime, but both sides have priming games. And I've got two pretty strong rules of thumb that I generally apply in prime versus prime games. Rule number one: almost all prime versus primes are takes. In order for it to be a drop, a player has to clearly have an inferior priming position. And as I always start with Woolsey's Law, before I decide whether red should double this, I ask myself if blue will take or drop, or should take or drop, and the answer is I think it's a take because it does appear to be a prime versus prime. And yeah, blue could get gammoned a bunch if he gets hit and crashes, and maybe he could turn it around and win the game as well. It's scary, but it's a prime versus prime game, and time after time after time, I find out that they're takes. Now, when we teach prime versus prime, and I have to admit that I learned a lot of this from Stick, we say that most normal prime versus primes are takes. Well, what is a normal prime versus prime? It's one where it looks like the player who's doubling could collapse. His prime might not hold, and the other player's prime might hold if things go well. And in that case, the player who's taking could turn the game around and win a reasonable period of the time. The definition normal is something that you can learn by eyeballing to see if it looks sort of like a normal prime versus prime that could easily be turned around. But there is an acid test. And the acid test is when you put it into extreme gammon, virtually all normal prime versus prime, the taker wins at least 30% of the time. That's going to be the case here. Now, what's the other part of the prime versus prime rule that I have? Usually, if it looks like I've got an edge, I'm going to double. Why? Number one, it might be a double. I mean, that's a pretty good reason. I use Woolsey's Law first, and I always double if I'm not sure I'm taking or if I'm sure it's a drop. But if I think he's got a take, as the case here, I still will usually double because I can see that red has an edge here. He's more likely to win a lot more gammons than blue. I can see how red could get hurt here and get stuck in blue's inner board, but I'm pretty sure that a double could be an exciting thing for me if I win enough gammons, and I could just win the game. But I have another reason for doubling. I know there's lots of human beings that don't believe in the prime versus prime as a take theory. There's lots of people that would drop this. And this is not the kind of game I count on people to misplay because I don't think the play for the most part is going to be that complicated for blue or for red for that matter. I don't think this one's going to be brain surgery, although you could be surprised easily win another couple plays. For example, if red comes in and hits, does blue come up, come out, try to hit inside to contain? There could be a few tricky plays, but basically I think that this position plays itself out pretty well if you're a decent player. So the reason I'm really doubling isn't that I'm counting on my opponent to screw it up in his checker play. I'm hoping he'll drop because I think it's a take. But even if he takes, I think that this is a scary, volatile position where I could end up winning a bunch of gammons. Let's see what Extreme Gammon says. Extreme Gammon is going to confirm that this is a normal prime versus prime by showing you that blue does win this game well over 30% of the time. And by the way, when it wins over 30% of the time and you have a take point, effective take point of a live cube take point in a money game of 21.5, when you take these gammons, net gammons of 15 gammons, let's say, and you multiply them times 0.5, that's 7.5 gammons, and you add 7.5 to the live cube take point of 21.5, you're at about 29%. And if a normal prime versus prime wins at least 30% of the time, I didn't have to worry about whether this number was 38 or 31 or 32. It's going to be a take. And it's always going to be a take unless gammons are a lot higher, or unless it really isn't a normal prime versus prime. Well, what's not a normal prime versus prime? I'd have to show you. An outside prime versus an inside prime would be a not normal prime versus prime. One player that's at the edge of the other player's prime and the other one that's not at the edge. And is more likely to crack. A player that has more time or more timing to hold his prime might make it not a normal prime versus prime. For example, red would have a much stronger game if he had more timing, so that he's less likely to crack his prime. Let's see if that's right. Yeah, it was just barely a no double before, or on the edge, and now it's more clearly a double. Of course, red would have a super game if his prime were solid. There's a big difference between a disjointed prime and a solid prime. This is a pass. Blue just doesn't have that much game here, not being at the edge of the prime. At the edge of the prime, that's a big difference. Look at this. It's not even a double when blue's here, and it's a huge drop when he's here. Let's try here. This is still, again, not at the edge of the prime, and it's probably going to be a big drop. It is a big drop. This is not any better, really, than this. In fact, in some ways, this is worse. He has to roll a 1 to move up. From here, he can roll a 2 or double 1s to move up. Or he can split with a 1 and then move up. So all of these features help you learn the game, but in the Chouette, I did double. My opponent was smart enough to take. And, well, I just moved the checkers around, I'm sorry. But in the original position, I did double. He did take. And it doesn't matter what the result was. We don't play results. And if I tell you, it might mislead you to thinking to do other things with this cube. I hope you found this interesting. I love prime versus prime positions. And thanks to those rules of thumb, I usually get it right. By the way, technically, when I know he has a take, then I really shouldn't be doubling unless I have 9 market losers. O'Hagan's law of market losers, saying you're going to lose your market 25%, then you have a double, that really works well in priming games, and that's pretty much what I did here. I thought if I hit this checker, I could lose my market quite a bit. By the way, this isn't the original position. That isn't either. So let's not put too much emphasis on what we're looking at right here. I should be a nice guy and show you the original position. It was from the Chou position cube number 6. There it is. There's back to our original position, and as you can see, it was really borderline. But I'm very proud of this double. I think I will get drops quite a bit. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.